in here.
Here, so you do?
So if you want, you can watch it on Facebook Live. Oh, you're here. Hold on.
Okay.
But since our lives go through Facebook, maybe some of you want to do that. But Shanna said you weren't allowed to touch your phone, so I wouldn't. Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, let's give him a hand.
Do you want my friend to hold the Facebook Live for you?
I got it. I'm
sure?
I'm fine. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, are all the rabbis in Israel this lean and good looking? Because the rabbis in America look like this, okay? So let me start by apologizing for my human imperfections. While the rabbis in Israel all are outdoors enjoying the Tel Aviv beach, the rabbis in New York are developing monopacks. I don't have a six-pack, I got a monopack. Men who have six-packs, they don't care about Jewish unity. You know, six, I believe e pluribus unum. From the many, there shall be one. How are you all doing tonight? You want to hear some stand-up or you want to hear kosher sex? This is, I believe, the fourth event that I've done with Jay and the Tel Aviv International Salon. Is that correct? Where is Jay? Did he already leave? There you are. Is this our fourth event? We did the Peter Beinart debate. We had like 1,000 people. That was Hanukkah 3 years ago. We did an event with Roseanne Barr about 6 months ago, correct? And then we did another one, didn't we? I think this is number 4. I'm so honored to be here. This is the most incredible, beautiful venue to do an event. And I published Kosher Sex 20 years ago. 20 years ago I published this book. This is the military trying to stop me from communicating this vital message. But we won't be stopped. 20 years ago, I published Kosher Sex because sex was broken. And somebody had to fix it. And who better than me? My name is Rabbi Shmuley. Now, Shmuley is not a common name. How many Shmuleys do you know? Probably none. I'm probably the only one. What is Shmuley? Why am I uniquely qualified to talk to you about sex? Okay. Why am I uniquely qualified to talk to you guys? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Shmu comes from the Hebrew root word shamu, which means killer whale. While Lee comes from the Hebrew root word Pamela Anderson Lee. If you put them together, you get larger than life Jewish sex symbol. Those are my qualifications. I believe that the foremost problem in society today is isolation and loneliness. I believe that we are becoming more and more fragmented, that we are drifting away from one another. And I don't just mean people who are single, who are dating, who haven't found Mr. Right or Mrs. Wrong. I'm talking about people who are even in relationships. I'm talking about people who even have close friends. Some of the loneliest women I have ever met are married women. Because loneliness does not mean that you are not surrounded by people who love you. Loneliness means that you are surrounded by people who don't need you, who don't understand you, who don't rely on you, who don't depend on you. In America today, we have a pandemic of an opioid crisis, which is sinking gargantuan billion-dollar companies like Johnson & Johnson, who was just ordered to pay like a $500 billion settlement, because people are using almost any cure they can find to assuage the pangs of loneliness. As we learn to communicate with one another through the prism of a telephone screen, as we text instead of talk, as we retreat into more and more Hollywood fantasy, and especially as we connect more seldomly romantically, I think people are feeling the pangs of loneliness. And it's an ancient, eternal problem. The very first human being who God created was Adam, And what was the first emotion that he experienced? Lo tov heyosa adam levado. He experienced existential loneliness. And because he experienced loneliness, God gave him an Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate who was opposite him. The opposite sex, with whom he could experience something which is profoundly human, something which is unique to us, and that's called intimacy. Only human beings understand intimacy, intimacy. Now we make the mistake of believing that people achieve intimacy through communication, through verbal dialogue, through an ideas exchange. But the truth is, the Torah says that the deepest form of knowledge is actually carnal knowledge. That the deepest form of understanding, Vayeda Adam es Chava Ishto, and Adam came to know his wife Eve, the deepest form of knowledge is carnal knowledge. Now, how could sex be the end to loneliness? How could sex be the highest form of understanding? What is sex? The pressing together of flesh? The friction created through flesh? How is that knowledge? How could the Torah possibly believe that sexual knowledge is a deeper form of communication than, say, the ideas that I'm trying to express right now? How does the Torah believe that what a man and a woman do in the privacy of their own bedroom, what a husband and wife do in the form of carnal intimacy, is a deeper form of knowledge than actual intellectual expression? Because, my friends, everything we do in life is calibrated for an audience. Everything we do, the words we choose, everything involves some mental assessment that confines and limits our soul so that we can take just a small trickle and communicate it to another person. The only time we share of our essence, the only time we share of ourselves completely, the only time we submit entirely to instinct so that we're not thinking, we're not calibrating, we're not rationalizing, we're not filtering, is in the sexual exchange of love, of intimacy between a man and a woman. And it's something incredibly profound. And I wrote this book because it's not working anymore. Because sex has become a form of pain for so many people. Because sex in our time has become something that we read about in Me Too. Abuse and misuse and degradation. Or sex has become utterly non-existent. Does anyone here know what the national average is? What is the national average of the American couple, the American husband and wife? What is the sexual frequency in the American marriage on a weekly basis? Anyone here know? Anyone want to try to guess? Anyone want to venture a guess? Don't worry, we're not going to take it as a reflection on your personal marriage or relationship, I promise. Be correct. What did you say? Once a month? Once a month? How much Netflix do you watch, by the way? Do you have like a triple subscription? What do you mean once a month? No, it's a little bit. Anyone else? But nice try. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Anyone else?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Who just said that?
I don't have a Netflix subscription.
Every 2 weeks? So you have Amazon Prime. He doesn't have Netflix, he doesn't have all the series, but he binge watches Amazon. I get it, I understand. It's actually even more frequent than that. Come on, someone help me. What is the national average in the United States? Anyone know? It's once a week. Now that doesn't sound like it's so bad. That's 53 times a year, right? It's not bad at all. Until you read further and discover that sex lasts for, get this, 7 minutes at a time. I'm not making this up. Which includes the time he spends begging. Now, by the way, you might ask, parenthetically, you're going to ask me, but wait a second, why are you bringing us American statistics? Not everybody is an Israeli male. Not everybody has got like a Viagra drip plugged into their cerebral cortex. I don't want to use Israeli examples here so that all of us American men suddenly feel utterly emasculated. We're not going to compete with a Mediterranean man. But can you imagine 7 minutes of sex a week is what the average couple can look forward to? How did we enter this sexual famine in our time? So sex is either pornographic, which involves the degradation of women. And what's the biggest problem with porn? The biggest problem with porn is, do you remember what Immanuel Kant, the great German philosopher, said about morality? What's the definition of immorality? It's where you use a human being as a means to an end. For example, that's why slavery is such an abomination. White people in America, in the South, were taught to look at a black man or woman and see them as the walking personification of labor, of work. They didn't see a person. Pornography teaches men to look at a woman as the walking embodiment of the male libidinous desire. She's not an equal. She doesn't have her own dreams. She doesn't have her own aspirations. She doesn't have her own feelings, her own sentiments. She is there to service male sexual desire. That's the problem with porn. And by the way, the more porn you ingest, the harder therefore it becomes to have a real relationship with a woman, because you look at women as a means to an end instead of seeing them as an equal. But with pornography beginning to replace real intimacy, and conversely, that also helps to lead to a sexual famine. What are we to do? So what I try to do in Kosher Sex is get to the very heart of what sex is. What is sex? Why do we have sex? Why does sex dominate conversation? Why is it such a powerful impulse? And there's only one of three possibilities. Number one, sex is for procreation. Raise your hand if you believe that sex is primarily for procreation. One. You believe that sex is primarily for procreation.
Yeah.
Now, it's very easy to refute this one. By the way, the majority of the Earth's inhabitants actually believe that sex is for procreation. First of all, the Catholic Church is all about sex is for procreation. That's 1.1 billion people right there. And evolutionary biology insists that sex is for procreation. It's the only area of real agreement between evolution and the Catholic Church. If you ask an evolutionary biologist, why do people have sex, he will tell you that our genes play a trick on us called romance and love in order to propagate the species. It's all about the survival of the gene pool. How do we refute this? Easy. If sex is only for procreation, then women who are pregnant would not love, would cease having any kind of sexual carnal desire. In the mammalian species, once the female is impregnated, she loses all interest in a male. She will not receive a male. She will not accept a male. Postmenopausal women would have no interest in sex. But I could also prove it from the male perspective. Do you know that evolutionary biologists try to understand why? By the way, does size matter? I usually joke, and this is easy here in this setting, that it's not. No. Wait, did you say the size of what? You want to get up here and be my wingman? You want to give a speech for me? You said it's the motion. Say that again. Motion in the ocean. What?
The motion of the ocean, but not the size of the boat.
It's the motion of the ocean, not the size of the boat. Are you talking about a man who's like particularly like a boat? Okay, not even like a yacht, a boat. Not even like a canoe, a boat. I was going to say, it's not the length of the stick, but the magic in the wand, but that's okay. But by the way, size does matter, believe it or not, because evolutionary biologists are not able to explain why is it that the human male has a disproportionately large male sexual appendage. For example, the average primate, silverback gorilla, is about 600 to 800 pounds. But the sexual appendage is a third the size of the human. And evolutionary biology cannot explain why does a human male need a disproportionately large sexual appendage. You know the reason is? The Talmud said this 2,000 years ago. To facilitate face-to-face sexual relations. We human beings are the only people who make love face-to-face. Which proves it's not about procreation, and it's not about recreation. What are face-to-face sexual relations? It's about intimacy. We can make love kissing. We can exchange life breaths. We can make love with our eyes wide open instead of shut, which is what the Zohar says we're supposed to be doing when we make love. By the way, just try eyes open sex and see how hard it is. This is a true statistic. Studies show that 90% of women close their eyes during sex. We know why the Jewish woman closes her eyes during sex. God forbid she should see her husband having a good time. You know, I understand that. But you know the real reason why do people close their eyes during sex? If you go into that hotel over there into an elevator, you will see that people who get into the elevator suddenly are studying the floor that they're arriving at. 5, 4, 3. When they're driving a car or one of these crazy scooters that I've been trying on the past few days, they're on their phone, they're holding a Starbucks, they're like slapping the kid in the back to be quiet. They're not. But the moment they get into an elevator that only goes up and down, they need to now study. What did you think? When you pushed 7, you were going to end up in Kansas? Like, what are you studying here? And the reason we look at the numbers is, in such a confined, small space with a stranger, we don't want someone looking into our eyes. It's too intimate. It's inappropriate. A stranger shouldn't be able to peer so deeply into us. I get that. I understand why we close or we avert our gaze in an elevator. But when you're making love to your spouse, your partner, someone you're so intimate with, you still close your eyes? That's how non-intimate sex has become. It's not a form of bonding. It's rather just sex. It's not lovemaking. This is your partner, not your soulmate. And what is kosher sex? Kosher sex is the motion that brings forth emotion. Kosher sex is sexuality which creates intimacy. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and leave his mother. He shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Whereas great sex may have you screaming the name of the deity during the act, kosher sex has you remembering each other's name the morning after the act. Kosher sex is the ultimate form of bonding. Kosher sex is the glue. It's the threads of the emotion that goes with the needle that leaves you feeling connected, so that we finally address and assuage human loneliness. We have got to save sex in our time. If sex is going to continue to be something that is vulgarized, trivialized, or is non-existent, what are we left with? How will men and women really connect? You know, 50 years ago, we put a man on the moon. And there were all these commemorations, July 20th of this year for Neil Armstrong. And the greatest technological innovation since we put a man on the moon is the internet. And 50% of the internet is dedicated to pornography. And porn is all about really cheap sex, boring sex. Porn is all about the illusion of sex. And by the way, let me make one point about this. I have a lot of men who come to me and say to me, look, I don't know what to do. I'm a sex addict. The sex addict is a misnomer. It's a misunderstanding. The sex addict is someone who loves having sex with a woman that he loves, or a woman who loves having sex with a man that she loves, in order to feel connected, to feel intimate, and to feel completely understood. The porn addict is something completely different. The porn addict wants to skip sex. They're afraid of human contact. They're afraid of human intimacy. They have contempt for women. They want to shortcut the natural nakedness that sex demands in order to achieve sexual climax with no intimacy, with no openness, with no emotion. They're the exact opposite of a sex addict. My friends, when I published Kosher Sex 20 years ago, I came under ferocious criticism. There was so much condemnation and criticism. And then At the time, Pope John Paul was Pope. I remember he came to my rescue. I got all these amazing blurbs about the book. And the Pope gave us this blurb that said, it was Latin, no chuppah, no shtuppah. And I came under ferocious condemnation from the Jewish community. You know who came to my rescue and made the book a bestseller? It was largely the Christian community that started to hear, they wanted to hear a message of sacred sex, of spiritual sex. And I'm amazed that 20 years after this book came out, here in Israel, my daughter Chana decided to take the book and translate it into a concept, into a store, into a business, if you will, but one with sensitivity and respect. And when Chana first opened the store in Tel Aviv, I was sure she was going to get clobbered, that she was going to be hit as hard as I was. It was almost like, now you're going to know exactly what your father's rabbinic career has been like. When you're the guy who writes Kosher Sex and Kosher Jesus, and you write a book called Lust for Love, co-authored with Pamela Anderson, there's some other controversies that I'm not going to get into. I thought she was going to get clobbered. Instead, Chana has become this international celebrity over the past 2 months, getting the most fawning positive press that I don't even understand it. She was on the front page of the Washington Post, the homepage of the Washington Post, the same day she was on the homepage of Drudge in the United States, both in one day, let alone Germany, Australia. We have some Aussies here. My wife is an Aussie. Aussie. No one knows. You know, you say that in Israel, Aussie, and they just like, are you choking? Do you need air? She has become a media sensation throughout the world. And I was asking myself, I don't understand. A woman opens, a guy writes a kosher sex book 20 years ago, gets clobbered. Sex is an inappropriate conversation for a rabbi. Why did you write the book? My daughter actually opens a kosher sex store in Israel, in the heart of Tel Aviv, and she's lionized as this great champion, and now she has sucked up all of my press. She has taken all of my media. I have become a total nobody. You know, I get Google alerts on the name Boteach every day. It's like 90% we hate you from all over the world. And now I get all these Google alerts and I get all excited. Oh my God, look at all the media I'm getting. And they're all Chana Boteach. My daughter has sucked up the media oxygen that I used to breathe. You know why she's received no criticism? Because people are that desperate in our time for a healthy, spiritual, and sacred path to sex. Something that is wholesome, something that is connecting, something that bonds, something that's passionate. Where is the passion? Where is the excitement? We have to have something that makes the blood course through our veins, that puts us in a marriage that actually makes us feel alive. You're not supposed to have a partner. That's a commercial term. You open a business with a partner. You're supposed to have a soulmate, someone to whom you expose your most intimate self to, and only to that person. And that, my friends, is kosher sex. So, in conclusion, as I take your questions, I want you to know this. If you were to say to me, Rabbi Shmuley, how is it that we could have a great, amazing sex life? How can I rescue my relationship, my marriage, from the marital morgue? How can I pull it out from the moribund state in which it currently lies? My friends, unfortunately, there is only one answer. I wish there were many. I wish I could give you a plethora of responses, but unfortunately to that question, there is only one answer. And it is, buy my book. Okay.
Can we give it up for the rabbi? That was very fun. Who has a question? Wow, you left them floored. They're thinking about sex so much they need to get out of here. Come on up. Thank you to whoever laughs at my joke. And state your name. No, you can say right there.
Rabbi, thank you very much, especially for putting me on the spot with my estimate there.
You're Mr. Netflix. Okay.
I'm Mr. Netflix. I was considering the extremely old couples as well, so my average may have jumped up. But anyway, I think I read somewhere in either of the emails that the caption of tonight was best friend versus passionate lover. Did I read that correctly? I don't think you went into that very much. Could you explain? I believe a lot of people maybe have a dilemma between being a best friend of the person they want to spend the rest of their life with, or having more of a sexual attraction, and it doesn't always come together. Can you go into that?
I'm just going to repeat the question. The question is, what's the difference between a best friend and a passionate lover, and how do you get the best of both worlds, correct?
Right.
Well, Chaim, everybody. Best friend versus passionate lover. Which are you? Are you the best friend or are you the passionate lover?
I want to do both, but...
You want to do both?
Yeah.
Whenever a married couple tells me, this is my husband, he's my best friend, I am half elated for them and I am half depressed for them. Because friendship is a very casual relationship. In fact, the whole when Harry met Sally dilemma is, what do you do when a female is your best friend if it starts becoming more than just friendship? Meaning if it starts developing a certain intensity. The beautiful relationship is where you are lovers and best friends. And I can easily demonstrate that by discussing the two kinds of love, right? So there's water in front of us. There's a watery love. Watery love is not passionate. It's the cool, calm waters of love. It's people you feel comfortable with, people that solidify you, that you trust, people that edify you, people that make you believe in yourself. It can even be the love between two siblings. Passion is inappropriate. That's watery love. Fiery, passionate love represents attraction. Eros, lust. In marriage, and I'm a big believer in sex in marriage, in marriage you're supposed to have a lover who is your best friend. You're supposed to be able to have the easy communication of two people who really trust and love each other. But there also has to be a little sprinkling of jealousy. I actually believe that lust is much more important than love in a relationship. I believe the passion part is much more important than even the friendship part. And I'm going to demonstrate it by, anyone have an iPhone on them that I can use for a second? I have two, but they're being used right now. Thank you very much. Can I keep it? Okay. Now, this iPhone, I'm sure many of you here have an iPhone. Is it your lover or is it your best friend? What did Steve Jobs want from this product? How did he make it the most successful commercial product in the history of the world? How did Apple become the most valuable company in the history of the world? Steve Jobs was not an engineer. He didn't know how to build phones. He dropped out of college. But what he was a marketer. And he introduced 3 concepts with this phone that made it something you could not live without. The first thing he did was, he said, I am going to make my phone impossible to buy. Apple's going to introduce a new phone probably next week. We barely even know because he was so secretive. And Apple is so secretive. But they're going to put 300 new phones in a store. It's going to sell out in an hour. You won't be able to buy one. Because what's the first rule of lust? You lust after what you cannot have, correct? Apple was counterintuitive. Create a product no one can buy. Number 2, never ever reveal what you're working on. Make it utterly mysterious. Hide, conceal, cover up. Number 3, sinfulness, rebelliousness. Create a company that will introduce a product in the most successful television commercial in history. The famous Super Bowl 1984 Macintosh commercial, which was about challenging IBM as an upstart. What was the famous slogan of Apple? Think different. In Judaism, wives are those 3 things. Unavailable. For 2 weeks out of every month, you can't have sex. You have to be best friends. You can only communicate verbally. You can't communicate carnally. But because of the unavailability, the fire of desire is stoked. people always lust for something where there's an impediment to their desire. We get bored of things where there is no erotic obstacle. There has to be an erotic obstacle. Let me give the phone back, if that's okay. The second thing is mystery. Relationships have to have mystery. The problem with friendship is about discussing everything. Friendship is about complete openness. Sometimes relationships actually require you to conceal and retain a part of yourself which is not shared. I'm a great believer in modesty in marriage. I tell wives all the time, you walk around the bedroom naked, you gotta be crazy. A husband has to earn the right to see his wife's body. A woman should have to earn the same. It should be about lovemaking. There has to be lust. There has to be passion. The reason why we've introduced friendship as a substitute for lust is that we don't know the rules of lust. We don't know how to sustain lust. And because we don't know how to sustain lust, we have put friendship as a substitute. And that means that the most that you can aspire to, I mean, let's be honest. Is that a serious question? Whether you should have a best friend or a passionate lover? If you had the real choice between the two, what would you choose? If I said to you, you could have a life living at the mountain summit. You could have a life swinging from the chandeliers. You could have a life which is fire and passion versus a life lived in the valleys. What would you choose? How is it even a choice? It's a choice because we don't believe that lust and passion and desire are sustainable. So you know what we do? We date people we're strongly attracted to, but we don't marry them. We marry the person we have the most in common with. And I have to tell you that the more overexposed men and women become to one another, as what's happening in our generation, the more friendship is emphasized because lovers, it's almost impossible. It's too much exposure. There's no mystery. There is no desire. Let's take Tel Aviv. You know, it's interesting. Often when I give this speech, or I talk about kosher sex, I invoke a beach here. I don't have to, because we're on a beach. Let me ask you a question. You know what I was on the beach today. I love this beach. You know what men do on Tel Aviv Beach? They fall asleep. They play makot. They throw a frisbee. How erotic is it if the guy can fall asleep? Oh my God, these women walking in bikinis, all this exposure of flesh. I mean, how exciting is it? And yet, think about this. If you're walking home from Tel Aviv Beach, after all this exposure, and you pass by someone's apartment, and she has accidentally left the blind open, and she's now walking around in her undergarments, unaware that someone's looking, innocently, because he's just walking home. Do you think that that guy would suddenly think, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm walking home from the beach. A woman accidentally left the blinds to her bedroom open. She's wearing the same amount of clothing that she would at the beach, only this time it's not a bathing suit, it's undergarments. Where is my frisbee? Someone give me a frisbee. That's not going to happen. Because this is sinful. There's supposed to be an element of sinfulness in relationships. That's why in Judaism, strangely enough, a wife becomes forbidden to her husband for 2 weeks out of every month. That's a fascinating concept. The idea of forbiddenness in marriage, the idea of the sinful marriage. What's the problem with relationships? They lack forbiddenness. Sex in marriage is obligatory. That doesn't sound very sexy. Judaism had a profound understanding of the human erotic mind. So it therefore emphasized modesty for concealment, the laws of nidah for men and women to become sinful and forbidden to each other, and finally, unavailability. There shouldn't be constant availability. So my response is friendship is critical in marriage, but being lovers, that's why you marry. You marry to have a lover who is your best friend, but a lover first. Does that answer your question? And when you get home tonight and pop on Netflix, what series are you binge watching currently, like right now? Okay.
Are we ready for the next question? Nobody has a question? Okay, come on down. Always the men. Where's the ladies?
Hi, Rav Shmuley. My name is Zach Schutzer. Just started listening to you on Audible. Really, really pleased that you came out. Thank you so much. When I was 16, a Jewish youth advisor quoted some divorce statistic and told me that if I don't stop hooking up in the midst of San Diego, California heat of teenagehood, then I'd most likely get a divorce. It scared the living lust out of me. And I'm wondering what you would have said.
You know, I am amazed at our own sexual ignorance today. Like even some of the concepts I'm introducing tonight, that lust is more important than love, people are looking at me like, that can't be true. The idea of the sinful marriage, utterly lost to us. And your question, hooking up. Just think about that for a moment. Forget about what your rabbi told you or you might end up divorced. Let's just look at the concept of hooking up. Once upon a time, people made love. Then they stopped making love and they started having sex. And they stopped having sex and they started hooking up. Now, I was raised in the 1970s where hooking up captured the image of a station wagon connected to a U-Haul. What does hooking up even mean? We use all these euphemisms to emphasize that it's meaningless. It's only hooking up. I didn't make love. I didn't expose anything of my innermost self. I didn't connect. No one can hurt me. I can have sex with someone, and because it's only a hookup, I cannot be hurt. Isn't that ridiculous? If you can share your most naked self with someone and it's only hooking up, then what hope is there for you to be known by another person fully and completely so that you are no longer alone? If you can wear all this body armor while you have sex, what hope is there of learning true nakedness? I don't mean physical nakedness. It takes 10 seconds to get physically naked. It takes decades to get psychologically naked. It takes decades to get emotionally naked. That's making love, where it is so raw. By the way, it's the best kind of sex. If I were, how many years ago was this?
9 years ago.
You know what I would have said? I would not have scared you and said that you're going to end up getting divorced. I don't like scare tactics. I would have said, if you hook up, you're going to have really bad sex. By the way, men who are womanizers are notoriously terrible in bed. Terrible. They don't have to learn how to fathom a woman. They don't have to learn new technique. They use the same dumb couple of tricks over and over again on multiple women instead of learning a true sexual repertoire and learning a woman's body and learning a woman's response. For them, sex is a parlor trick. Why is sex the most pleasurable of all human experiences? Because it's the only thing we do in which we are completely free. We shed our clothing. We shed our inhibition. We shed our clothing. We shed our inhibition. We shed our social filter. Liberty, freedom is what we all strive for. There is no freedom like sex, and there is no incarceration like hooking up. Hooking up is a form of emotional incarceration. You are going to go to bed with someone you don't know. You're going to be worried about how your body is judged. You may even have to fake sexual climax. For God's sake, what does that even mean? How do you fake something like that? That's how preposterous this becomes. But even if you don't have to fake it, how pleasurable is it going to be if you enter with all these inhibitions? So, I actually believe that where there is real emotional intimacy, real commitment, I think there is glorious, out of this world sex. And by the way, let's also for a moment, you look like I'm about to sentence you.
I'm just trying to rewire all those years, but this is good.
The rate of male orgasm to female orgasm in sex is 8 to 1. 8 to 1. You know, in sex, men are kind of like a triangle. Easily aroused, and then he is easily a corpse. 1 second, I love you, I'm gonna marry you. The next second, you are lying next to a dead man. This guy is not even alive. Women are much more like a curve. They're not a microwave oven, they're a convection oven, which means the heat is real, the passion is real. How does a vector learn to coexist with a circle? You know, in Kabbalah, men are not from Mars and women are not from Venus. In Kabbalah, men are lines and women are circles. So anatomically, men are lines and women are circles. I don't have to ask you to use a lot of imagination for that one. But even in terms of how we approach life, men are very linear, women are very cyclical. So for example, studies show that if two guys get together, they always talk about 1 of 5 subjects. So usually 1 of 5. What are the 5 male subjects? Help me. Number 1?
Sports.
No, sports is number 2. What's number 1? No, sex is number 4. Come on, number 1 is? Money! Now, money is a linear subject, right? The stock market is up, it's down. Subject number 2, I just said it, sports. Sports are all lines. Baseball bats, hockey bats. Even a football or a soccer ball is all about, did it pass the line? Did it not go past the line? Sorry? We need to wrap up? So the point is that everything is very linear. Women are much more cyclical. And the way they live together is, I believe that we have to be more sensual and less sexual. Sex today is becoming so masculine when really it should become more feminine. Men have to learn how to embrace a more feminine approach to sexuality, which is about connection, which is about lovemaking. The pornography stuff is so profoundly masculine. Okay, if we have to wrap up, let's do one last question. From a woman, please. Can I do it with a woman? Okay. Really?
Can you tell them that you speak, you'll answer a couple questions?
We can't just have one woman ask a question so we can have a woman?
You need to do like a 20-second. Oh, Delia, what's your question? Okay. In a world where sex is a talent show, do you think this is going to end, and will we get back to a culture where men respect women?
I am immensely hopeful. And not because of the Me Too culture. I don't believe in, it's not going to come about through fear. It's going to be the opposite. It's going to be men and women deciding that they want to connect with a certain sacredness. They want to be more sensual. They want to be more naked. They want to be more revelatory. They want to expose more of themselves, and that means doing so with exclusivity. I think that we are headed in a very positive direction. Look how many people came to hear about kosher sex. You could have heard about... Most people would never go to a rabbi to hear about sex because all they've heard is that Orthodox Jews only have sex through a sheet with a hole in the middle, right? Raise your hand if you've heard that Orthodox Jews have sex through a sheet with a hole in the middle. You've heard that? What's your name? No, right behind you. I'm so sorry. You've heard that Orthodox Jews have sex through a sheet with a hole in the middle, right? How big a hole are we talking? And since men never ask for directions, is there like some sort of neon arrow that's flashing on and off that says insert here? Or it's not true that Orthodox Jews have sex with a sheet in the hole in the middle. That's way too lenient. That's only Reform Jews do that. We Orthodox have sex in 2 separate bedrooms through a hole in the wall. Okay? The fact that all of you, amidst all these dumb misconceptions about rabbis and kosher sex, the fact that all of you came to hear a lecture about kosher sex, of course I'm hopeful. Because people do want to have passion and love and intimacy. They want a lover who's their best friend. My friends, thank you for all coming tonight. May all your sex be kosher sex.
That was great. That was really enjoyable. We're selling books down here for whoever would like. And keep in touch with us on Facebook. Look out for our emails. We will be doing more talks. We won't be here. We'll be at a new venue. We'll be doing them maybe twice a month. And stay in touch with me. Good night. Enjoy. Have a great weekend.